Welcome to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks, a show that provides extraordinary insights for product managers who want to go faster and farther in their product management careers.
Hello, this is JJ Rory, Vice President at Sequent Learning Networks. In our Masters of Product Management podcast, we tap into the experiences of people who work in and around product management to help you learn and grow in your product management career. When I work with product managers, I often tell them that having an entrepreneurial mindset is a very beneficial trait that will help them think and act in ways that will drive ownership, accountability, leadership, strategic thinking, and other aspects of quote unquote owning the business of their product. I've seen firsthand how this type of approach, if you will, helps product managers better navigate the various stakeholders and the bevy of decisions and prioritizations that must be made in an agile but important way when leading their product. So our conversation today is all about how product managers can learn from entrepreneurs and startup founders and what they can take into their role as product managers from entrepreneurial type of people and endeavors. So regardless of what type of company or the size of company that you're working in today, there are insights to be gleaned from entrepreneurs. And so we want this conversation to help you as a product manager kind of glean some of the insight that you can take from these startups and entrepreneurs and take them into whatever environment that you're working in today. So my guest today is an expert on this, and he's here to share some of his wisdom. Ryan Frederick, CEO of AWH and author of The Founder's Manual. Ryan has been part of starting and growing several product companies and services firms. He's the author of 2 books, again, as I mentioned, The Founder's Manual and also Sell Naked and Other Advice for Growing Services Firms. Ryan is a principal and at the product studio AWH, as well as he speaks frequently on creating products, growing services firms, and leadership. Ryan, thanks so much for joining me today.
JJ, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a good conversation. I'm excited about this. I'm sure I'm going to learn some stuff as well. So your team at AWH works with startups and large established companies. So what have you found in your experience that startups do better in terms of innovation and product development?
It might get me, kicked off of your podcast, but
that'd be kind of fun.
Okay, good. Let's go there then.
What is it? All news is good news, or promotion. So I could start to say, "Hey, my first kickoff of the podcast."
Right, the first person I had to
throw a guest off,
cut off, and right. It's startups, and I'm a little bit biased here, certainly in my perspective, because I learned very early in my career that I was not a big company person, and that I'm a product person, but also more entrepreneurial and more startup-y than corporate. So that's even sort of my baseline perspective personally. But I think that startups do almost everything around product better than corporates do. I say that experientially because I've lived it myself, and I've seen through our work at AWH with startups, mid-market, and corporate clients that corporates have a really hard time sort of getting out of their own way. And here's a great example. So I was talking to actually someone, that I consider a friend at a large insurance company, and they want to build a new product. And he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I would really like to talk to you about the team at AWH engaging with us on this new product." And I was like, "Sweet, but let's do it." And then we had a couple of conversations, some emails went back and forth, and then I get an email from the procurement team at the company, and it says, "Okay, now you're qualified to receive the RFP." And I reached back out to my friend and I said, "RFP, what?" And he said, "Oh yeah. I mean, we have to do an RFP around this." And I said, "You realize that this is not going to get you the product that you want or the outcomes that you want if you take this new product process, through this RFP channel and process." And he was like, "Well, why do you say that?" And I was like, RFPs are designed to drive cost, right, to the lowest common denominator. And it's great if you're going to buy 5,000 pencils.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to build a product that you want to add value for the company and to add value for your customers, taking it through an RFP procurement process is not the path to building a great product. And he was like, "Well, this is how we do it all the time." And I said, "Yes. And how many great products have you guys built in the last decade?" And he said, "Probably none." And I said, "Exactly. So you can't continue to think that you can build great products operating in the same mode that you have for the last 10 years, building unsuccessful, less than stellar products that you guys aren't proud of and that your customers don't care about." And so, and we'll dive more into it as we continue the conversation, but I think corporates get so wrapped up in process and infrastructure and bureaucracy and politics and all of the things that create friction, frankly, around their ability to develop really successful, great products, and they stand behind these things thinking that this is what helps us build great products. But then when you challenge them and you say, "Well, when's the last time you built a really great, successful product?" And if they're honest with themselves, it's probably been like a decade or more. So I'm biased, but I think that corporates, often just have a hard time getting out of their own way, where a startup has no choice, right? It's not optional for them to get and stay close to customers. It's not optional for them to move fast. It's not optional for them to be decisive, right? They don't have a choice. So that line of demarcation between a corporate having lots of choices, lots of resources, lots of infrastructure, and startups having no choice but to move quickly and be decisive, that sort of separates the two in a very wide chasm, because you've got abundance versus scarcity, and scarcity when building products is actually incredibly valuable.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So I want to talk in just a minute specifically about some advice to product managers and that sort of thing. But I want to dig a little bit here first. Because this is especially, and we at Sequent work mostly, I would say, with larger companies, right? And so we see this a lot in terms of, the larger companies and product managers are feeling a bit inhibited by the bureaucracy, because it is what it is, right? There's structure around it. There's bureaucracy. Some of it is, at least in the right, the ideas in the right place. But to your point, it doesn't fit every situation, right? And organizations don't always understand product management and innovation, so they try to make it fit in this other mold. So, in your experience, how can product managers who work in these large companies, they're kind of bogged down by this bureaucracy, how can they work in these environments and still be innovative and bring fresh ideas to the table?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to be comfortable pushing against the status quo, and they're going to have to be comfortable being seen as a rebel and as an outsider. Yeah. Because I think that if they truly assess how good their company is culturally and operationally at product, and if the answers are not very good, then a product manager at a corporate has some choices to make. They can either acquiesce and go along with it because they don't want to rock the boat, and they value the title and the position and the logo being on their LinkedIn profile, and the benefits package, et cetera. They value that stuff more than being a sort of hard driving, aggressive product manager that wants to be involved in really successful products. And that's okay, because not everybody does want to be a rebel, and not everybody wants to rock the boat. And some people are at big companies because they They want they want the package a big company can offer them, but they still like being in product. But I think if you're going to really be successful in building successful products, I don't think that you can just sort of go with the flow inside of a company that is product dysfunctional. And if you want to be part of building successful products, I think you've got to push back on some of the culture. And I would say find some people that can sort of take the ride with you, and then take some risks and say, all right, we're gonna try this, and if it doesn't work, then we might get chastised for it in some way. But if you find a couple of people that also want to sort of push the edges and take a company from being okay at product to building a great product, then find some people to go along on the ride that can help you at least get a case study out there for the rest of the organization to then look at, to say, okay, these guys sort of went over here. They sort of went outside the bounds. We're not really thrilled about that. But look what's happening with this product that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten if they had stayed inside of the boundaries. And so I think product managers at corporates, if they really want to be part of building successful products, they've got to think about operating in a little bit of a rogue sort of outlaw way that isn't going to get anybody in trouble, but is going to create a new paradigm and a new product sort of bellwether for a company that the rest of the company can look at and say, well, geez, maybe they're onto something. Maybe they have some good points. Because if it doesn't start with that sort of rebel squad, going out of camp, to go do some exploration and to try things differently, the organization's fundamentally not going to get that much better at product.
Yeah, I love especially what you just said, and I want to build on that or talk a little bit about that. One of the things I've learned from working with corporates, but in large companies, but specifically, industrial and automotive and physical goods, manufacturing, that sort of thing. So there is I guess a good argument for having a line in the sand. And, once you're putting capital in there and you're putting some, you've got manufacturing lines going and that sort of thing. The companies will tell me, well, we have to have bureaucracy. We have to have this structure around it because it's so hard to change things after the fact. And my answer to that is that's even more of a reason to be innovative upfront and flexible upfront. So to build on what you were saying, have you seen where some of that rogue activity can happen up front, right? So again, one of the things that I see in these corporations is that just such a fundamental issue is that product managers aren't spending enough time with customers. And as crazy as that sounds, it is very common. And so, that itself can be rogue, right? Like you said, having a few folks say, look, I'm just going to go out. I'm going to be in the field. I'm going to be in market for a while. And we're going to do something differently because we simply can't make decisions if we don't have this information. That is rogue. It sounds pretty fundamental to me, but it is actually rogue in many organizations. Do you see anything like that where you can find spots where that type of kind of skunk works team, if you will, works better?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree that I think the easiest path to going rogue for a product manager inside of a corporate is to spend time with customers. And I get some pushback on this sometimes, but I still firmly believe that it's true. The voice of customer, initiatives and sort of label was created by companies who, frankly, didn't want to spend that much time with customers and don't, but they needed some way to represent the fact that they at least intended to spend time with customers. And
yes, I agree.
So they created this voice of customer initiative and thing. And so if you go inside of most corporates now and most corporate product teams and briefs, right, and project sort of overviews, and there'll be some paragraph or checkbox or line item at some point that says, okay, has the VOC, voice of customer, been represented? And there'll be a couple of sentences or checkbox that says, yep, it's been represented. You know what? There is no way without it just being without it being pure luck that you develop a product that customers and users are going to value and want to use if you didn't spend time with them understanding the problem, understanding the workflow, understanding their existence around the problem and how they would use the product, et cetera. So if you just represent it with voice of customer, you have zero chance of building a successful product in my mind. So absolutely, one of the ways that product managers can go rogue is just say, hey, I'm going to go spend time with customers. One, nobody in their right mind would push back on that because you would have to be, labeled clinically insane to say that doesn't make sense and isn't a good idea. And then inside of that activity of going and spending more time with customers, then a product manager can start to say, oh, I now need to take a designer on these sessions with me because I need design feedback and I'm hearing things from customers that need design input. Oh, and now I need an engineer or developer to go with me. And that's how a product manager to corporate can start to build their squad, right? Is put it all under this wrapper of I'm just spending time with customers. And that's how they can begin to sort of develop a product team for a product. And before anybody really even knows what's happened, now the product manager certainly knows what's happened because they're sort of orchestrating it all. But before anybody knows what's really happened, they now have a little product squad that can go to work on the product and have a much greater chance of success with this really small team because they've actually spent time with the customer instead of representing having spent time with the customer.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, after they prove that this can work, then they have a kind of a mini case study to keep it going internally and do it more often and have others do it as well.
Absolutely. And I think that, one of the things that you mentioned around physical products, because I've mostly spent, my time in software products, but we have some clients at AWH that are IoT clients. And so they have hardware components, to what we're doing with them from a software perspective. And one of the things I'm seeing more and more in software that software products and software product managers can learn from physical product managers and people is software products are now leveraging test kitchens. That's a great way to make sure you have deep problem understanding and to iterate based upon the actual the operating mode, right, of a product being in a real world environment. And so there's a startup that I'm aware of that's in the pharmacy benefit management space, and they opened their own pharmacy. So as they build out their product, they can use it at their own pharmacy to understand, well, what does it mean to build a pharmacy benefit management software product? Well, guess what? We know because we operate our own pharmacy. There's a future sort of work experience company that's open to work experience labs that companies can send their team members to, and then they see what's going on and how people are interacting and how they're using the space and how long they're there, what kind of work they're doing, and that's feeding into the platform. So I think that physical product people have had an advantage over digital product people, frankly, for a while because they've been much more test kitchen oriented, and digital product people have looked at that and said, we build software. We don't need any physical sort of ramification around this to know whether it's working or not. But in the real world, your software product is going to get used literally in a physical environment, in a physical operating mode, even if it's people just working remotely, right, in a very digital way, there's still a real operating mode that your product is going to become a part of. And people who are jobs to be done sort of, practitioners, can relate to this best probably because even a digital product is going to fit in to some job to be done workflow. And the better you understand that workflow, the more likely your software product is going to be successful. And the better you build it inside of an environment that actually leverages the workflow, you're just ahead of the game.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I love those examples too. So what are some other things that you've seen that you would advise product managers on to up their game in whatever environment they work in?
Yeah, I would say, and we talked a little bit about one of them, and so my sort of tier of principles is get and stay close to customers and don't ever drift away, because what is hard for us as humans is other humans are messy. And so as soon as we think we've gotten enough from them, we stop talking to them about our product. We stop iterating with them. We stop asking for feedback. When we think that we've got enough to go build what needs to get built, our base operating mode is to then say, all right, we're good. And then we stop talking with customers and we stop iterating with them. And that's when, even if you had something that was good and was a kernel, that's when it can go off a cliff. So get and stay close to customers. Second one is understand the problem at an expert level. If you don't understand the problem at least as well, if not better than your customers and your users, you are likely not going to be able to build a product that solves their problem and or create a story and messaging and marketing around it that's going to be effective for distribution and acquiring customers and getting customers to adopt and to keep using the product. And the third one I would say is that I still see, and this one's also hard because we're not wired to do this, most product validation and user feedback happens in the positive, and it needs to happen in the negative. So most of us go to early customers and like beta users, and we frame our validation in questions like, tell me what you like about this, tell me why you'd use it, tell me how this would be valuable for you, etc. And we get a lot of false positives because people don't want to disappoint. And also because we framed the question in the positive, they're going to then think of giving us a positive response because we've set the stage to get a positive response. So, and product managers who are listening to this, can probably relate, because all of us have gone to users and customers and asked for validation in the positive using similar questions to what I just referenced. And then we're surprised when we go to them with the first version of the product and they're apathetic about it. And we're like, well, we built what you said you wanted and what you said you liked. And the part that we were missing is, but we didn't ask them what they didn't like. So the best validation is not in the positive, it's in the negative. And asking questions like, tell me what you don't want it to do. Tell me why you wouldn't use it. Tell me why this wouldn't solve your problem. Tell me why this isn't valuable to you. And at every step of the building process, from low fidelity wireframes to high fidelity wireframes to then interactive prototype to then version 1, you should be taking that stage of the product back to those customers and those users and saying, tell us where we got it wrong. Tell us how we got it wrong. Tell us where we missed the mark, right? And if you don't do validation in the negative and all your validation is in the positive, you're going to get so many false positives that make you think that you're on track, and then nobody's going to want your product.
Wow, that is so true. I can't tell you how many examples of that I can think of in my own time as a product manager. Oops, and also, of course, working with folks. So that's great advice. Okay, so we all know, you and I both know firsthand, of course, working with organizations, that while we can tell product managers, do your thing, be the owner of this, go rogue, do what you need to do to succeed. At the end of the day, it takes leadership too, right? It's got to be a top-down effort to optimize for product management. So what do you tell leaders in organizations about how they can optimize the environment for great product management?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that product leaders can do, or technical leaders, or whoever product is sort of reporting up to, whatever organization they're a part of, is to create an environment that welcomes and honors experimentation, because creating a product is an exercise in a series of experiments. And if you don't value experimentation, then you probably aren't going to have a very good product culture, because people are going to be afraid to try things, and they're going to be afraid to fail. And one of the things that is also human nature that we're pushing against building products is we form a hypothesis, and then inside of a product, frankly, there's a whole series of hypotheses that we are trying to prove or disprove. And in too many organizations, having a hypothesis disproven is looked upon as too much failure and like waste of time, waste of energy, waste of money. So they will do whatever they can to make the hypothesis true so that they can keep moving forward. And so everybody feels good about what's happening. And so the project will continue to get funded and it'll continue to move forward. There is no shame and there is no failure in a hypothesis inside either a grand hypothesis for a product or a micro hypothesis inside of a product to be disproven. A hypothesis being disproven is not failure. It just means you disproved that hypothesis, and now you're probably going to form a new one based upon the information that you've gleaned. That's not failure, that's learning. But most organizations are not structured as learning organizations, even though that gets thrown around a lot now and is kind of, cliche. Most aren't, and most don't honor experimentation. A product leader who really wants to have a thriving, successful product discipline inside of their company honors, values experimentation and learning over the traditional sort of corporate mantras and values of, hey, because most people at corporations get paid for what they know, right? And their title is representative of what they know and their experiences. Most people, even in product at most corporates, are not compensated for what they're learning and for what they're and the experiments they're running. They're compensated and they're judged based upon what they know. So product leaders have to shift their thinking from valuing what people know to valuing what people are learning and what people are going to know moving forward, not what they know because of their 25 years inside of the company. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love that. And man, you're preaching to the choir here. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to tell a product manager and product leader that, you got to redefine failure, right? Failure is not, getting to or getting to some point in a project and saying, hey, this is not actually the way we should go, and recommending stopping something, right? To your point, they think that's failure. That's not failure. That's success. Like that's way more successful, or will be, than going forward on biased information, right?
Yeah, failure would be continuing to fund and to put time and energy into a project that isn't going anywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
But product after product at corporates continues to get funded and continues to get supported, even though everybody on the product and project team can look at each other and go, "This is craziness. We should not be moving forward on this." But people have to defend the fact that this got initiated and this got funded, and instead of being honest and saying, we've validated this isn't going anywhere, there is no there here, right? That this should stop and we should all go move on to something that has some potential to succeed. That is so frowned upon because it's considered, such a black mark from a failure perspective, that the real failure is continuing to fund and support projects and products that should come to a demise very quickly and don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's this like currency equation between leadership and product teams, and that equation too often is I give you funding and you give me some output, and that output has to be a product or something, right? Something that I can make money on or sell or what have you. Well, the output, if you can say, well, the output is that we experimented, we learned more about the market, and the output in this case is to make a better decision, right? But that currency equation doesn't work like that in most organizations. So I think that's a really, really important point. And I hope that the folks out there, both product managers and leaders who are listening, really kind of that drives home. It's not easy, but that's what you've got to do in your environment to you've got to change that culture. You've got to change that. And if you don't, to Ryan's point, it's going to be really hard. You're always going to be kind of walking into the wind, as they say.
Yeah, valuing outcomes over outputs is critical. You're absolutely right. Funding and budget, in return wants outputs, and that's the wrong perspective to have. You have to value outcomes, even if the outcome is you learn something not to do.
Absolutely. So this next question I have for you, it kind of feeds into that, I think. Why can't a company be good at innovation without being good at product?
Yeah, this is it. I don't know if I coined this, but I thought of this a couple of years ago as I was talking to
I love this.
A person who's in a corporate innovation, pal of mine, and he was sort of waxing poetic about how many ideas they had and how many brainstorming sessions they were conducting and these design thinking workshops that they were doing. And I said, wow, that sounds like you guys are really busy. And it sounds like you guys have a lot going on. He was like, oh, yeah, man, I mean, we're just cranking. We're cranking really hard. And I said, okay, so after all of this, stuff, right, then what? And he was like, well, then, some project teams will get formed and we'll go after the best ideas, et cetera. And I said, okay, and how do you structure those project teams, et cetera? And then it sort of, it just completely fell off. And he was like, well, that's not really our area of responsibility, et cetera. And what I said to him and the epiphany that I had for myself was, if you aren't good at product, you can't be good at innovation, because innovation without being good at product is just an exercise in ideation.
Yeah.
And that's what they were doing. They were really good at identifying opportunities, and they were really good at vetting those opportunities, and then nothing happened because they had no product discipline. They had no ability to actually then execute on any of those things. And if you think about innovation as sort of ideation and then product as execution, you can't possibly be good at taking those things that come out of innovation, incubation, if you will, and actually having them become anything of substance and anything that's real if you're not good at product. So I think companies that run around saying that they're good at innovation, but who aren't good at product, they're actually not good at innovation. They're good at spinning up ideas. They're not good at innovation, because you can't be good at innovation if you're not good at product.
Yeah, if you can't execute on that great idea, what's the point?
Yeah, and
if you can't do it efficiently, then that great idea may change because the market's changed by the time you got your crap together to get your product out, right?
Totally. And it's like, taking the conversation full circle, it's like this insurance company who, wants to build this new product and they want to go through an RFP process to figure out, who, they want to, what outside firm they want to, build it with. It's like by the time the RFP process is over, the problem that they're trying to solve right now or address, they might not even care about in 6 months.
Right.
So if you don't have the ability to, and that's where I think corporates still could learn a lot from startups. Startups don't have time to wait around for processes and, to design think, right? And all of these other methodologies and tools and systems and processes that corporates leverage. Startups just have to go, right? And the value in that is a startup that gets really good at product and is really close to their customers and really close to the problem is going to eat a corporate's lunch every day around who's got a better shot at redefining that industry and a product inside of that industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So final question for you. Do corporate product managers, you just mentioned a little bit there, but do corporate product managers, so product managers that work in big corporations, have some advantages over startup product managers?
They do. And one of them, I'll harken back to something that I referenced earlier, is the ability to do something like a test kitchen. And if like a corporate product manager who's going rogue a little bit and is going out and meeting with customers, and if that product manager then assembled a little customer advisory board for this product and this initiative, and then said, okay, customer advisory board, to what extent are you willing to allow us to come into your shop and sort of test our assumptions and run experiments and use you as a little bit of a test kitchen, or the aggregate of all of you? Can we set up a little bit of a test kitchen? That's tremendous value that a startup would never get access to, or rarely gets access to, because startups and startup products are considered high risk, right? Who's this company? What's this product? Is it secure? Where if you're a corporate product manager, you've got that logo, you've got the backing, you've been de-risked, right, by your association and work inside of that corporate with customers. And so you should leverage that, and you should push that to the greatest extent you can to ask customers to dig in with you around the problem and the product in a way that it might even make you uncomfortable, because it might seem like you're overstepping. But if you can get a customer advisory board together and you can get a test kitchen established, so now you're not just building inside of your company and then taking it to customers. If you're building inside of your customer's operation with them riding shotgun with you, holy cow, now you've really got something. Now you've really got an environment that is likely to produce something of value. Whether you want to pursue it or not, you then get to choose. But are you probably going to figure out the problem, and are you probably going to figure out a way to solve that problem? Probably. Then you get to make a business decision about whether it's worth pursuing, but you're probably going to get to a point of being able to solve the problem in alignment with customers. And I mean, there's just nothing that tops that.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great discussion this has been. I've really enjoyed our time together, Ryan. So again, just to summarize, product managers, you guys use the assets that you have to your, at your disposal internally, but also keep that mindset. Keep that mindset that allows you to stay close to your customers constantly, right? And I love what Ryan said earlier. Don't drift away from those customers, right? Understanding your customers is not a point in time activity. It is a constant of what you do. Be flexible with, the market and how that's changing. And then, always kind of challenge that status quo, no matter what environment you're in. Ryan, thank you so much for this conversation. You've just shared some great advice with us. I've loved the discussion. Thank you so much for joining me.
JJ, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And thank you all for joining us on Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. I am JJ Rory, and I look forward to speaking with you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. If you'd like to take your career to the next level with additional tools, training, coaching, and books, be sure to visit Sequent Learning Networks at sequentlearning.com.